I crossed a boundary and took full responsibility, but after breaking up with me, my girlfriend slept with someone I know from my life a month later and now says she only ever loved me and was seeing me even being with him. I'm a 28-year-old man, and until recently I was in a relationship with a 26-year-old woman. We talked for about 9 months before officially dating, and we were together for 3.5 years after that. We're originally from the same state, but we made a huge leap together and moved to a completely new state. She was the first person I ever lived with, the first partner I truly built a life around, and for a long time, I genuinely believed she would be my future. This story is long, messy, and painful, but I feel like the details matter. From very early on in our relationship, one major difference between us became clear: her views on pornography. She was extremely against it, more than anyone I'd ever dated. This wasn't just a preference, it was deeply tied to trauma. She had grown up with a stepfather who had inappropriate behaviors related to porn, and she had also dated an ex who was, by her account, completely consumed by it. Pornography, to her, symbolized betrayal, objectification, and emotional abandonment. Before her, I had never thought of porn as anything particularly significant. I didn't feel addicted to it, didn't choose it over intimacy, and didn't view it as a replacement for connection. For me, growing up, it was just something people used occasionally to release sexual tension. We had a healthy sex life, but like many people, sometimes urges would hit at moments when intimacy wasn't available. I didn't think much of it. Because of her trauma, she would ask me repeatedly throughout our relationship if I was watching porn. Every time she asked, I felt cornered. I didn't want to hurt her, and I didn't want to open wounds she was still healing from. So instead of being honest, I would dodge the question or outright say no. I justified it to myself by telling myself it was harmless and that I was protecting her from unnecessary pain. Eventually, though, the guilt caught up to me. I didn't like the feeling of hiding anything, especially from someone I loved so deeply. So I decided that moving forward, I would stop watching porn altogether. Instead, I started relying on my imagination. What I didn't realize at the time was that this shift didn't actually address the underlying issue. It just changed the form. I began fantasizing instead. Sometimes it was about people I didn't know at all, like someone I'd seen briefly at the gym or a random photo online. Other times it was vague, faceless imagery. I honestly believed this was normal. But then there was one woman in particular, someone I didn't know at all at the time. I fantasized about her occasionally, without attaching meaning to it or seeing it as anything more than fleeting imagination. I didn't pursue her, didn't interact with her, didn't even know her name. Years later, through a series of coincidences, that woman became a close friend of my girlfriend. I didn't choose that. I couldn't have predicted it. But once it happened, everything changed. Around this time, our relationship started to feel strained in other ways. I began feeling emotionally pushed away at times, like I was always the one reaching, reassuring, or holding things together. Instead of addressing those feelings directly, I internalized them. Fantasy became a coping mechanism, a crutch I leaned on when I felt disconnected or unwanted. Eventually, during couples therapy, the truth came out. I told her about the fantasizing, including the fact that one of the people I had fantasized about had later become someone she knew closely. I watched her world shatter in real time. The pain on her face is something I will never forget. 10 weeks later, after therapy sessions filled with tension, tears, and uncertainty, she sat me down and told me she thought she wanted to break up, but she wasn't sure yet. There was a family vacation already planned, and she asked if we could go on it together and try to act like everything was normal. During that trip, I felt hopeful. I thought maybe we were repairing things. We laughed, talked, held hands. I allowed myself to believe we might survive this. But 2 weeks after we returned, she sat me down again. This time, she told me she had decided. She gave me a date by which I needed to move out. I was devastated, but I understood. I cried, she cried, and I agreed. In the weeks leading up to that date, we made a mutual decision to continue treating each other with kindness and familiarity. We didn't want the situation to become hostile, volatile, or emotionally abusive. We lived together like a couple who loved each other but knew the end was coming, and that somehow made it even harder. On November 18th, I finally left the house and moved into my own apartment. Walking out of that place felt surreal. That house held years of shared routines, inside jokes, late-night talks, and quiet moments that felt like home. Now, I was packing my life into boxes and trying to convince myself this was the right thing to do. When I left, we agreed that since the relationship was officially over, We were both free to see other people if we wanted. She told me she wasn't going to, that she wasn't ready for that emotionally. I didn't press the issue. I didn't even consider seeing anyone else myself. My focus was just survival, getting through the days, adjusting to the silence, learning how to exist without her presence. I kept my distance intentionally. I didn't text. I didn't call. I didn't show up just to talk. I told myself that if I truly cared about both of us healing, space was necessary. That distance came at a cost. I missed holidays we used to love together, traditions we had built. I missed her birthday entirely, which hurt more than I expected. Every calendar reminder felt like a small punch to the chest. Then she messaged me saying I had left some things at the house and should come pick them up. We agreed on December 8th. The weekend before came and went, and when I finally showed up that Monday, everything felt familiar but off, like stepping into a memory that no longer belonged to me. We ended up outside, smoking a cigarette, talking the way we always used to. She asked how I was doing. I asked how she was filling her days. It felt strangely normal, and that made it harder. At one point, she told me I should really consider seeing someone, that if I felt ready, I shouldn't hold myself back. The comment caught me off guard. It didn't sound casual. It sounded rehearsed, like she was trying to convince herself of something. I brushed it off and told her I wasn't ready, that I still needed time to process everything we'd been through. She nodded, and we changed the subject. Weeks passed. On January 9th, she messaged me again saying I had left a few more things behind. I went back over, collected them, and once again we found ourselves outside, smoking and talking. The air felt heavier this time. I couldn't explain it, but something in my body told me to ask a question I didn't want the answer to. I asked her if she had slept with anyone. There was a pause. A long one. She finally said yes. She told me reluctantly that it was someone I knew, not well, but well enough. Someone from the same social orbit. She said it happened at her place, the house we had shared, on December 23rd, just before she left for Christmas vacation. A little over a month after our breakup. The words landed like a blunt object. I felt everything at once: shock, sadness, jealousy, anger, grief. It wasn't just that she slept with someone else. We were technically broken up. It was the speed, the familiarity, the location, the fact that it was someone I knew, the fact that this happened in the space that had once been ours. What made everything worse was that this wasn't some faceless stranger I'd never have to think about again. This was someone who existed in my real, everyday life. He comes into my work from time to time. He said hello to me before. I've even sold him something on Facebook Marketplace. That's actually how I first met him. On top of that, I'd done some work for him in the past. He was never a friend, but he was familiar. Close enough that seeing his face now feels like salt in an open wound. Before all of this, she had never spoken to him. Not once. There was no overlap, no prior connection, no shared history. That's part of what makes this hit so hard. She told me she met him on December 5th at a local concert. That alone was enough to make my stomach drop, because that venue was a place that meant something to us. Music was always a big part of our relationship, something we bonded over, something that felt sacred. The next night, December 6th, they played Magic, the gathering together with another couple we were close friends with, at our spot. The place her and I used to go to regularly, the place that still felt like ours even after the breakup. Then, on December 7th, she invited him back to what used to be our apartment. Not just to hang out, but for a movie night that turned into making out. And finally, on December 23rd, he came back over to that same place, and they had sex. Seeing it laid out like that, the timeline, the progression, felt like being slowly crushed. Each step was another boundary crossed, another piece of shared history overwritten. And suddenly something clicked. That conversation on December 8th when she told me I should start seeing someone if I felt ready, it wasn't random. It wasn't concern for my healing. It was guilt. Or justification. Or both. I just hadn't seen it at the time. All of it hurt more than I know how to articulate. During our relationship, she would constantly give me a hard time about my past, about how, before I met her, I had been promiscuous. And she wasn't wrong. I slept around when I was younger. But when I committed to her, I was fully committed. Physically, emotionally, intentionally. I never cheated. I never crossed physical boundaries with another person. I chose her every day. At the end of the relationship, she told me that I could finally move on and sleep with other people, that it was something I'd always wanted during our relationship. That cut deep. It reframed my mistake. crossing her boundary with corn and fantasizing into something uglier than it was. I owned that mistake. I admitted it in therapy. I wanted to grow from it, not use it as an excuse to detach or act out. I didn't want a relationship to end. I wanted to become better for her. I didn't want to sleep with anyone else. I told her that. Healing was my priority. Repair was my priority. I was willing to do the work. So hearing that she slept with a local guy from the music scene a month and a week after we broke up devastated me. Not because she wasn't allowed to, but because of everything surrounding it, the speed, the overlap, the familiarity, the places, the timing, the history. And then there's him. This guy has a reputation around town. In the music scene, people talk. He's known for predatory behavior toward women at shows. There's even a rumor that he slept with a minor. He was taken to court over it and wasn't convicted, but the story has followed him ever since. Whether legally proven or not, his presence has always made people uneasy. He's just off. Slimy. The kind of person you instinctively keep your distance from. Knowing that was who she chose made everything feel worse. It wasn't just painful, it was deeply unsettling. It made me question her judgment, her values, and whether the person I loved was the same person standing in front of me now. She's always been a strong activist against predatory behavior. She's outspoken, principled, and vocal about holding people accountable, which is part of why this situation hurts as deeply as it does. She genuinely had no idea about this guy's past or his reputation in the local music scene. I did. I'd heard rumors, warnings, and patterns about him for years, but at first I kept it to myself because I didn't want to add fuel to an already painful fire or seem like I was trying to manipulate how she felt. Before I ever told her any of that, we talked about her sleeping with him. She apologized and told me she didn't enjoy it. She said it was quick, empty, and that she could only think about me while it was happening. Hearing that didn't bring comfort the way she might have expected. If anything, it made everything heavier. It didn't soften the blow. It made it feel more complicated and painful. I told her I still loved her, because I do. From her perspective, she genuinely believed I wanted nothing to do with her after the breakup. That was partly true. I pulled away to protect myself and to try to heal. But at the same time, she had been the one to float the idea that maybe after a few months or even a year, we could reconnect and see where we stood. That contradiction is something I'm still struggling to understand. What hurts the most is how fast everything happened. Meeting him, spending time with him, bringing him into places that once belonged to us, and eventually sleeping with him, all within weeks. I try to be fair, but part of me pushes back against the idea that it just happened. She made a series of conscious choices, just like I did when I crossed her boundary by fantasizing in ways that were too close to reality. I don't get to excuse my actions, and neither does she. She told me that afterward, she felt disgusting. That she missed me deeply and realized he wasn't what she imagined the experience would be. He was also going through a breakup, and in the end they were both using each other for physical comfort. She said her love language is physical touch, and I can understand that on some level. I really can. But I still can't stop asking myself, out of everyone, why him? Now I'm stuck in this emotional limbo. She wants to get back together. She says breaking up was a mistake, and that what she did only made her realize how much she loves me. And the hardest part is that I miss her too. I can acknowledge my own mistakes. I didn't respect her boundary around corn enough. I let fantasizing become a crutch instead of addressing our growing disconnect. I hurt her, and that played a role in a breakup I never wanted. But I can't shake the fact that she went on multiple dates and slept with someone else barely a month after an incredibly painful, unresolved breakup. It wasn't mutual closure. It wasn't clean. And knowing that makes the idea of rebuilding trust feel overwhelming. This situation has hurt everyone. Our friends, our families, people who once believed in us as a couple. Part of me wonders if this was her getting even, consciously or unconsciously. Another part of me wonders if I somehow deserved it. I don't know which is true. What I do know is that my heart wants her, and my mind is warning me. I'm afraid of repeating patterns, of burying pain just to keep something familiar. I'm trying to be honest with myself, but every option feels like a loss. I'm open to hearing perspectives, but please, be respectful. This is still raw, and I'm genuinely trying to understand what I should do next.